Welcome to the June 4th edition of PFF Forecast. We're taking a break from being a basketball podcast. We just gave out so many winners. Game one of the NBA Finals, recording this on a Sunday. We're going to talk some NFL win totals. We have some alt lines that are out. So, of course, we're bringing in Judah Fortgang to talk not just alt win totals, but also some season specials for different teams. It's going to be a fun podcast. We'll talk about these a little bit, but we're going to dive in now that they're up. And we'll close out with just a little bit of NBA Finals talk. It's going to be a great podcast. Well, let's rock. Brad, I don't know if we could have been more on with game one, so I guess we got to take somewhat of a break from the NBA Finals. But before we get into it, how are you recovering from that game one?
Yeah, I mean, just money to start out the series. We got our future's looking great with Bam and 25 shots, and then Caleb Martin basically non-existent. So now just sitting back enjoying it. I'm curious, honestly, if the Heat can make this a series. I know they just didn't shoot well, but like that was the most casual triple-double I think I've ever seen in my entire life from Nikola Jokic.
So casual. I feel like I got pretty lucky because one of the bets that I made on the pod last week on was it Monday or Wednesday, I can't remember which one, was Jokic points, rebounds, assists, and got it at 50.5. The opposite ended up with 51. I thought it was kind of unlucky to go that low because he had some lulls during the game and barely took any shots in the first half. But it will be very interesting to see what game two looks like. We'll talk about that a little bit at the end, obviously recording this on a Sunday. So most of you listening will just be able to either laugh at us because we were wrong or go, wow, those guys are super sharp. Make sure I join the Discord so I can get in on all of their basketball bets going forward. It is a good reminder before we get into it, you should join the PFF Printing Press Discord because not just men's basketball, but women's basketball, the WNBA. Ben Brown, who we had on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, has been posting his WNBA model picks for every single day of the WNBA season in that Discord. He's been on absolute fire. I don't know how many units he's up total. I think last weekend it was like 3.5 or something like that. So it's been fantastic. It's a great way to stay engaged during the off season. And of course, if you have not yet subscribed to our new YouTube channel, do so as well. We're posting all of the podcast episodes on that one channel. Will be dedicated to that. So it'll be two good ways to kind of get involved and get into the community. Let's get into it here and let's talk a little bit about some alt win totals. So Judah, this was something that we talked about when we discussed win totals early on when they first came out. That, betting either side of a win total, you're getting, pretty close to even odds. Sometimes it's juiced a little bit one way or the other, but if you have, a kind of read on a team or you have a take on a team, usually you want to get more of a payoff for being right. So talk a little bit about how you like to play these alt win totals.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's mostly it, that like, if you have some conviction to start with, that means you probably think the price is not just a little bit off, but a lot off. And with that, you can kind of push it further down. And like, yeah, if you think a team is projected for like, let's say 8 wins as opposed to 8.5 wins, it's probably worthwhile to take 7.5, given the volatility of games and the fact that like you can get more money for being right. Right, it's probably going to be like $80 in the sense of like going from -110 to +170, whatever it is. So that's kind of the general approach. Which is like, I would like to push to get the more money rather than like having a no sweat bet. But also like there are often times where you can almost play at tails rather than, like projecting the mean outcome, which is going to be the, -110. If you have a theory on a team or a player that's going to be like, I think that like Sam Howell is going to break out this year. And as opposed to like, if you're right and you just like bet they're over at 6.5, like, great, you were right on that thesis, but you could have been so much more right. You really can capitalize if you kind of take that tail and say, like, I want to take their 8.5 or 9.5. And obviously, there are different markets to kind of express that conviction. But alt lines are and alt totals are a great way to kind of express that.
Brad, I assume you've taken all Chicago Bears overs.
It is on my list that we're going to get to in a second here. But also, I should say, Judah was the one who brought that up last time we had this conversation. But yes.
No, it's a good point, though. You hear this discussed. We've talked about it a lot with same game parlays, actually. And I think there's a lot of similarity, Judah, in the way that you construct your theses around same game parlays with these alt win totals, where it's like, look, if I'm going to be right, I want to win a lot. And you think about this in investing, maybe for better or worse sometimes, but look, if I'm going to lose, I'm going to lose, 1 unit. But if I win, I want a chance at winning 100 units. And sometimes that people get a little carried away with that, but oftentimes that is what a lot of kind of like early stage investing does look like. And so I think it's a cool parallel. Let's start, Judah, with you then, and take us through your first alt win total that you like.
Yeah, kind of hinted to this. I like the commies over 8.5 at plus 275. I think Sam Howell, we wanted to bet the over passing yards. Actually, even most passing yards at 150 to 1, a crazy long shot. And even if he doesn't get there, which I don't expect that. I think this is a team that is playing in obviously a very weak division and a very weak conference, and they have really, really good wide receivers. Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin, and Curtis Samuel will really pop in most of our separation metrics and kind of a bunch of underlying numbers. If Sam Howell is good, and again, like he's a 5th-round pick, he's a little bit of an unknown, and he throws downfield in a weak division, this is a team, I think, that can kind of take the next step and be one of the league's better teams. And again, I think it's all about expectation. And for a team to win 9 games at plus 275, that's not a lot. Not too much has to go right. We can look at the Giants of last year as an example of just like a couple of things going right here or there. And like you can kind of luck into 9 wins. This happens all the time. And I want to be betting on teams that at least have a potential for their quarterback and wide receivers, which I think is what, for the most part, wins games in 2023. That's the angle I want to be betting on. It's not like a defense and a running back, a team that's going to kind of grind out games. That's not what I'm looking to bet on. And for what it's worth, I do think the defense has a lot of really good pieces and should be at least a plus unit. I'm not going to, get into some projections like we did with the Packers last year. I have no idea if they're going to be the 10th best defense, the 20th best defense, but I do want to be betting on a quarterback and wide receiver. And at plus 275 for only 9 wins, I think that's an attractive bet.
Like it. I like also how you mentioned the name of that team. Just to be clear, yeah, you have to. The formerly football team. Brad, your first bet.
Yeah, they were on my short list as well, so I do like that one. So I'm going to go with a team that both Timo and Ben Brown highlighted as a team they liked in the regular season win total market. I think in part tied to this first data point, and that it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. The over 10.5 is plus 225. And in Ben Brown's first ELO article, which is how we generate our power rankings and look at strength of schedule, things of that nature, the Steelers actually only had the 21st most difficult strength of schedule. That's because despite being in a good division, they actually catch the AFC South and the NFC West, which, 2 good teams, yes, but also probably 2 doormats in Arizona and the Rams. So a fairly decent schedule here, and kind of the same thing Judah talked about. If you want to buy in on, all right, we're going to have a Kenny Pickett, take that next step as a second-year quarterback. I love what they did in the offseason on both sides of the ball in the trenches. Broderick Jones, you trade up for him. I think also a lot of what they did was very aggressive. You sign Isaac Seumalo, you traded for Broderick Jones, you trade for Allen Robinson, who, yes, is not the Allen Robinson of old, but is probably their 3rd receiver now. You have depth at almost every unit. Outside corner still a little bit iffy, but they did add a couple guys in the draft there. Obviously, these fringe first rounder and Joey Porter Jr. It's just, if you think they are going to continue with their stretch of being, a very competitive football team, if you think Pickett takes that step and they could, win 11, 12 games hypothetically. And I think it's a perfect spot where I don't want to bet the regular number. I want either they're going to have a great year or they're going to, go 8, 9 wins and maybe not hit the standard number here.
I like it. I have 2 that are kind of the same ilk, and I'm curious how you guys feel about these. So these are teams that I think have a chance, an outside chance of really, really sucking. And I think it's interesting to look at. And by the way, these are on DraftKings. I should have mentioned that at the top here. But basically they are giving out at alt lines from 2.5 to 13.5, depending on the team. And so the Cardinals, the Texans, and the Colts all have under 2.5 win options. The Cardinals are plus 290 to go under 2.5. The Texans and the Colts are plus 1,000 and plus 11 to 1. So look, they're clearly buying in on the Cardinals are tanking, right? They're going to try and lose games. I think that makes a lot of sense. But for the Colts and the Texans, they've got some really interesting dynamics about these two teams. And I like Texans under 2.5 wins at 10 to 1. And I'll tell you why. I think all that has to happen for this to be a legit option is for CJ Stroud to stink, because he's got to be, that team is so void of talent. Okay. And they pick up Will Anderson. Okay. That's fantastic. He's great. But if they have a rookie, they've had some bad quarterback play, but I think CJ Stroud behind that supporting cast has a chance to be outsizedly terrible in his rookie season. We've talked about how bad he was under pressure. We've talked about the S2 score. I think there's a narrative there. It's like a real kind of, disaster. And they have no reason, in my opinion, not to just kind of play it out. Now, the really interesting thing about the Texans here is that them playing poorly, obviously they have traded their first overall pick. So they're going to be trying to win games here. But I'm just kind of taking the narrative of a 1 in 10 chance that CJ Stroud is really, really, really bad. I think there is better than a 1 in 10 chance that he's really, really, really bad. And in which case, I think winning 3 games would be a challenge for them.
I mean, yeah, the one piece you mentioned I was going to bring up, which stinks, is like they'll have all the motivation in the world to avoid the optics of giving Arizona.
Yep.
If they had their own pick still, but I still like it, but I would like it even more if that little wrinkle was thrown in as well.
I was going to say the exact same thing.
Judah, you're up next.
Yeah, you go with the Bucks under 4.5 at plus 245. And this is one I've spoken about on the podcast. I think there's really just a killer combination here of a quarterback in Baker Mayfield who loves holding on to the ball, was by far the worst at the pressure to sack ratio also, meaning that when he sees pressure, he gets sacked more than any other quarterback by a very wide margin. It's because he takes a long time to throw the ball. And the Bucks offensive line is dreadful. Absolutely dreadful. I think Tristan Wirfs is great. Everyone else is a weak link. I don't think there's anyone with like above a PFF grade of like 55 or something of that sort. I think this is a team. I don't know how the new offensive coordinator is going to go. This is not a team I think that's going to adapt. I think they're going to continue to run the ball, set up kind of poor situations for Baker Mayfield. And sure, they have Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. I think those are receivers who are still good, but are on the decline. This is not a defense with a ton of talent. I don't think, yes, the division's weak, but everyone else is going to be looking at the Bucs and saying, this is an opponent we want to play. I mean, look, I could have just said, like, I saw the Twitter video of the quarterback battle for the Bucs with Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask, and that was enough. But I think there is some truth that this is not a team that's going to be competitive at all.
Those videos have been really impressive, by the way. It looks bad. And to your point, there's this kind of exaggeration between what we saw last year with probably the best quarterback in the NFL at mitigating pressure by understanding what the defense is doing and getting rid of the ball quickly. And now you're switching over to Baker. So it's not just going from like average to bad, right? It's going from like very, very good to bad. And if Brady looked that bad last year, with how good we know he's been historically, this could be really, really ugly for Baker and certainly for Kyle Trask as well. Brad, what you got next?
Yeah, and they also, trade away starting right guard Shaq Mason, take all defense in the draft. So I don't think they're really even trying to win all that much either. You guys did steal a couple unders I like, so I guess I'll go with another over here. That is the New Orleans Saints. I mentioned them. We did our first run through the regular season wins where I said there's no reason to bet this team on the normal line. You could make a case for the under or the over, I think, on an alternate spread here. But for me, I'm going the over. It is the over 11.5. Or let's see here. Yep, 11.5 plus 270 on DraftKings, as you mentioned. Look, probably in the worst division in football. You have Derek Carr in a division with a rookie Bryce Young, Desmond Ridder, and the aforementioned Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask. They have the easiest strength of schedule in the entire NFL for us. And yes, that stuff obviously changes. It obviously, fluctuates a great degree. But I do think at the extremes, you can at least take it into consideration. You go look at their schedule; it's comically bad, at least on paper, as of right now. And then, look, I have concerns with their defense on the interior. Their roster is not perfect, but it's just like they're going to be good enough, and I think they're going to have 5 free wins in their division potentially, and they'll be able to carry through here and maybe hit this alternate plus 270.
You like that? Okay, next one I have is another under, and this is Atlanta Falcons under 4.5 at 8-1. So let's think about this for a second. They took Bijan Robinson. Now, Bijan Robinson is the favorite to be rookie of the year. I'm sure he's going to have a good offensive stat line come the end of the year. But I don't think that really leads to winning. And the reason for that is I think Desmond Ridder, it could easily be the worst quarterback in the NFL. If you can't kind of sense it here, my trend is to think about, if you have a really terrible quarterback situation, like you're not going to win a lot of football games. And which teams have these huge question marks at quarterback with kind of average to maybe below average teams around them? The Falcons certainly have a better supporting cast than the Texans that I just mentioned. But Ridder was absolutely horrific last year. He was outside of the top 40 in accuracy rate last year. It was really pretty ugly. So what are they going to do? Are they going to go and just run the ball up and down the football field on teams? They have a good offensive line, so that's great. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to throw the football, and they've invested in Kyle Pitts and Drake London pretty significantly. The problem is that if Desmond Ridder can't throw the football, their two best players are just going to not be contributing to them because Desmond Ridder is just throwing it all over the barn. So I think that there's a legit chance. And here's the thing for the Falcons: if you're looking at that team and you think about what they've invested in their offense, right? What do they have? They have first-round pick at running back, first-round pick at tight end, first-round pick at wide receiver. What do they not have a first-round pick at? Quarterback. So as they look towards this next draft, and they'll be thinking about it, I think, this season quite a bit, they get off to a rough start. All of a sudden, you got to be saying, okay, how are we going to get into the top 5 next year so that we can get a Drake May, maybe an outside shot at a Caleb Williams? Because then all of a sudden, you look at this team and you go, wow, they've got a great shot because of all that talent around them. So I think that's a calculus that they've got to take into consideration as well. So I like Falcons under 4.5 at 8-1. Judah, any more for you?
Yeah, I got one more. That's the Broncos under 6.5 at plus 210. This is something I think we spoke about on previous podcasts, but again, it's all about starting the expectation. This was a 4-win team last year that I think fundamentally was probably a 4-win team. They were a horrific offense. Sean Payton's good, sure. Do I think he's 3 wins worth good? Probably not. And if I'm backing Russell Wilson to just kind of play at the same level, and he's been on the decline for multiple years, especially this is a team that you lose Jerry Jeudy, who's been injured pretty often. All of a sudden, the wide receiver depth is gone. It's not a particularly strong defense. And I'm going to get plus 210 for Russell Wilson, who really did nothing to impress last year and showed no signs that actually, maybe I'm still good. I'll take this at plus 210. I don't think Sean Payton is worth 3 wins.
He's lost weight though, Judah. Haven't you seen that?
Right. That's important. He'll be more mobile.
He's not Kevin James. He's
Brad, what else you got for us? Anything else?
I got one more throw in. Same thesis as all the unders, I suppose. Packers under 5.5. I am a little bit scared here. You're betting against an organization. I do think to a degree you can kind of bet on organizations in this sport, at least from just a floor ceiling perspective sometimes. But I mean, if Jordan Love's bad, which I think there is no evidence that he's good, there's no evidence, I guess, that he's bad either. But we really don't know right now. Yes, everyone fell in love with Christian Watson last year because he had a couple explosive games, was still very inconsistent, had a lot of drops, was not, maybe a bona fide number 1 receiver. The offensive line is shaky with health, has good players on it, but all those players have torn their ACL in the last 24 months. And the defense has talent. It has never mattered. They kept their defensive coordinator for this season for an inexplicable reason. It's tough because the schedule is probably not too difficult. The division's not very good. But if you think the bottom is just going to fall out there, then maybe they go under that and you get, I think it's plus 270, plus 265, excuse me, on the under 5.5.
Yeah, I like that one as well. By the way, I'll mention this because I talked about the Texans under 2.5 being 10-1. Bets out there that have shorter odds than that. The Rams to go under 2.5 is just 9-1. And I found this one to be interesting. The Kansas City Chiefs, this might be the most unbettable of the alt win totals, but under 7.5 for the Chiefs is 9-1. Just ran because I was thinking about this. Like, what is the least bettable alt win total? Can you guys do better than Chiefs under 7.5 at 9-1? What has to happen for them to win 7 or fewer games?
Someone's got to go
more than Mahomes
and read.
But I'm saying, like, I think even if you replace Mahomes, I mean, who's their backup now? It's Blaine Gabbert, I think.
Who knows?
I think it's Blaine Gabbert because I'm pretty sure it's Gabbert. Like, I still think he could, like, Andy Reid could probably carry him to 8 wins.
Yeah. Even like Shane Buechele. Yeah.
He's got
to go after Reid and Mahomes.
I agree. You have to lose both.
I think so too, right? I mean, because you've got to basically have Mahomes get injured like first, series of the season. And then you've got, like Reid has to go, I don't know, like 10 to Mahomes and nurse him back to health so he can't coach the rest of the year either. Which would be incredible. I'll close out. I have one more that I liked, and this is something that we've talked about in the past, which is, the NFC and particularly the NFC West, and where everyone is certainly a big fan of the 49ers, and they're the favorite to win there. There's some huge questions about their quarterback. And look, we've seen them be really, really strong with Kyle Shanahan, but we've also seen them be not so strong. And so actually, instead of betting the 49ers kind of out of the way that I'm going to bet this is with the Seahawks, because I think there's a way that certainly, even if the Niners are just mediocre, that the Seahawks benefit from that. We look also at the Rams. I think there's a chance that they're really, really bad. And then simultaneously, you see the Seahawks with a lot of really young players who played really well last year. And so you'd expect them to only improve. You have, I think, strength at the wide receiver position that just got stronger with Jackson Smith and Jigba. And this is obviously a bet a little bit on Geno Smith as well, but they're over 10.5. It's plus 175. Yeah, I like that. I would also make a case for over 12.5. That's 5-1 if you're looking for a little bit of a bigger payoff. By the way, these are all on DraftKings, I think I mentioned, so you can go check them out yourself, and I'm sure we'll discuss more in the Discord, which I mentioned earlier. You can go check that out. The link, we'll post it on Twitter, and you can find it in the description of the YouTube video if you're watching it there. All right, let's talk a little bit about these team season specials. So these are on FanDuel Sportsbook, and they kind of got them by team. And I'll give you kind of a flavor of what some of these are. So for example, if you look at the Baltimore Ravens, you have Baltimore Ravens score 1+ touchdown every regular season game, Lamar Jackson to throw 30+ passing touchdowns, Lamar Jackson to score 10+ rushing touchdowns, Ravens to beat the Bengals on the road and at home, sweep the regular season series, Baltimore Ravens to reach AFC Championship games. So they've kind of compiled these all together, and there's some interesting ones that are out there. So we'll take a look at these and kind of go around the horn just as we did previously. Judah, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Brad was a little bit skeptical of Christian Watson, but one I really like is Christian Watson to score 10+ touchdowns at plus 500. This was a guy who had a 31% target share in the red zone, which was, I think, top 5 in the NFL last year, which I assume to be somewhat sticky in the sense that they're probably, number one, he's open a bunch, and 2, they're probably scheming some targets for him, especially with jump balls. And he's a guy that can score from anywhere on the field. And we saw that, with Jordan Love, actually, on the Sunday night game. You can score from 70 yards out. I love that combination of, a guy who can score 1 or 2 touchdowns from a long way out, and then a player who teams are going to scheme targets to. And he's a talented player. He's good in contested catches, insofar as those are sticky year to year. He certainly has the build for it. At plus 500, I really like that one.
No, I would say like I'm not even sure I'm saying I like that bet. It's more, I don't know if he can be a 1,300
No,
yard
I know.
receiver.
I was just
No, no,
teasing.
no, no. But it's like I'm almost like it almost aligns where it's like, and also that could come into a lot of garbage time touchdowns and things of that nature as well. Like he's a big play guy, but I don't know if he's going to get you 6 catches a game. Anyway, no, I take no offense. We're all here to win money. I'm trying to fade the Packers any way possible. So another guy we probably talked about a little bit on this show. I went with Miami Dolphins with Jalen Phillips to record 10 plus sacks in the regular season. I can tell Judah maybe has eye on that one. That is plus 140 on here. So he was 12th for us in pass rush win rate, was top 15 in pressure rate as well. Actually, if you believe that sacks are kind of a skill, obviously we think they're largely random, but maybe there is some signal to finishing. He's had good sack production, maybe not great sack production, but solid his first 2 seasons in the NFL. You now bring in Vic Fangio, Bradley Chubb. You probably didn't really get to see the full Miami Dolphins defense with Bradley Chubb in the fold after that trade last year. And I think you're going to get a better secondary with Jalen Ramsey, everything else they've done on the back end. And I think Vic Fangio is going to get him a lot of coverage sacks, but also going to dial some things up, stunts, different things to get him really teed off on opposing quarterbacks. No more Melvin Ingrams, maybe he plays a little bit more as well. Although he does log a good amount of snaps, which is also why I like this. He is a true 3-down guy, so to speak. So yeah, Jalen Phillips over 10 sacks, which is plus 140 or 10 plus.
I like it. By the way, looking at some of these, and there's some interesting stuff out here that you'll see. If you look at the Chiefs, it's kind of funny because everything here is like basically even money, but it's like, still kind of crazy stuff, right? It's like Mahomes, 40 plus passing touchdowns, plus 115. Chris Jones record 10 plus sacks, minus 140. Kansas City to score a touchdown in every single regular season game is minus 200. Even Isaiah Pacheco to score 10 plus rushing touchdowns is plus 150. So I'm not going there. I'm going to continue going towards some some kind of crazy numbers, but ones that I think could in the realm of possibility happen. And I'm going to go to Brad's Chicago Bears. So Justin Fields to score 15 plus rushing touchdowns in the regular season is 16-1. This is interesting because his odds of throwing 30 plus they've got at 5-1. I think that there's a legit shot that he's got a better chance at scoring 15 rushing touchdowns than he does throwing 30 passing touchdowns. So I'm just kind of taking that based on the fact that I think those are unevenly priced. Obviously, scoring 15 would be insane. He's got to have a couple of games where he gets like 3 plus. But there's, I think, 2 things going for him here. The first is that there's probably not a better athlete playing quarterback in the NFL besides him. Maybe you put Lamar Jackson up there, but dude is absolutely electric. I think they're going to take a page out of the Eagles playbook this year. I think getting Justin Fields, to get some of those QB sneaks across the goal line makes a lot of sense for them, as opposed to putting him in a position to throw the ball, turn around and hand it off. So I think he benefits from that a little bit. So kind of a crazy one, but I will take Brad. You're welcome. I've just jinxed Justin Fields. There's no way that he scores 15. Judah, you're up next.
Yeah, well, I definitely had my eye on that Jalen Phillips one, but another one I really like is Dak Prescott to score 5 plus rushing touchdowns in the regular season. So at first, I think just to set the tone, Prescott had 6 rushing touchdowns in each of his first 3 years. Granted, he's dealt with a bunch of injuries since then. I think he's fully healthy this offseason, but really this bet is about a team that lost Ezekiel Elliott, who is, say what you will about Elliott, they really bruised him in the red zone. He got a bunch of carries down there. I don't see Tony Pollard, especially coming off injury, or 5'5" Deuce Vaughn as kind of being that back that they want to use in goal-to-go situations. I think we're going to see a lot more, especially on the 1-yard line, of Dak sneaks and even just areas like they did in the wild card game of options for Prescott to score. He's done it in the past at plus 650. I really like this one.
Yeah, I like that one a lot. Yeah, and I think too is that you lose the goal line, Ezekiel Elliott component, and like Dak is the guy, not Pollard, not Deuce Vaughn. Like he's the guy that'll fill that in. So
yeah, he has that body type.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I like that a lot. All right, I got another one that I had to make sure to check, and I was actually surprised the odds lined up. I didn't want it to be a sucker bet. Again, fading the Green Bay Packers. You can bet the Jets will make the playoffs and the Packers will miss the playoffs at plus 150. You can't actually parlay, like these futures on DraftKings. But I was just curious if I parlay the minus 240 of Packers to miss. Wait, shit, did I do that wrong? No, bad radio. I may have calculated it wrong on the fly, but I was trying to calculate what the odds would be. No, I did it right. All right, great radio. Maybe cut that, Ethan. We'll see. So basically, if you actually parlay the two bets, you get the same payout. It's plus 150 either way. So I just figured maybe DraftKings would put this in there and give you terrible value. It does align with their actual make-miss playoffs value if you think those lines are fairly set. So nevertheless, it is Jets to make the playoffs, Packers to miss the playoffs, plus 150.
Like that. What do you think about that one, Judah?
Yeah. I think look, I mean the Packers are a big question mark as we've said. But I think that's almost just betting on two likely outcomes. I don't hate it. Like the Jets should be in a good position to make the playoffs. And the Packers are a huge question mark. At plus money, I do like it.
You got any more for us, Judah?
No, I got those three.
Awesome. All right, let's before we get out of here, quick reminder, go use promo code forecast, get 25% off on a PFF Plus subscription. You can get that on pff.com or on the PFF app. Get you through fantasy season, some new fantasy tools coming your way this year, which you'll definitely want to take advantage of. And then, of course, all the betting content and tools throughout the entire season, our player props tool, our best bets tool, the whole thing. And it'll take you through free agency and draft next year, plus unfettered access to the PFF NFL mock draft sim. So go get that PFF Plus subscription, 25% off, promo code forecast, FORECAST ASAP. All right. Now, before we get out of here, we are, of course, a basketball podcast, thanks to our performance in game one. So we're like 19 minutes away from tip, Brad. We've got the Heat +8, total of 216. I believe the total close was at 219 and a half. We hammered the under, and it was a very, very good bet. The kind of thesis there being that the Heat, good defensive team, but had been just shooting lights out on these wide open threes. They went like 1 for 19 or something, at least in the first half. On those, Drews went over 9. It was a kind of disaster. So what are you looking at either here in game 2 or remainder of the series?
Yeah, so it was in large part due to the, just missing open shots. But also, like I mentioned, the Nuggets are not having a bad defense, but both teams are very slow in pace of play. And I think you saw that. There were a lot of 20-second possessions throughout the entire game. And that's also going to happen, in crunch time in an NBA final. So I honestly don't hate the under again. I think the Heat are going to come out and play a very constricted, slow the pace down, do not let the Nuggets run, and try to make it a half-court basketball game, because I think they might view that as their way of winning. I think once you saw Aaron Gordon start to run and Michael Porter Jr. start to run out a little bit, like that's when the lead went from 10 to 20 and kind of got out of hand. So if anything, I'm hitting the under here again.
Yeah, I was actually surprised it didn't move by more than 3 points. It was kind of surprising to me. I think there's some interesting kind of takeaways from the first game. Obviously, that the Heat, I thought, offensively played about as poorly as you could outside of Bam Adebayo. So yeah, it was kind of a game for a while. Obviously, it ended up not being a game by the end of it. But a few more threes go down for them. I can get behind +8. I'm looking for the first half number. I don't know why I can't find it right now. But the first half I think is interesting to me, just because, to your point, the Heat are going to come out, and I think this is a must-win game for them, right? So they've got to come out and just be, kind of dynamite in this first half, or else, playing from behind, there's just not much of a shot for them. The other thing that I think is interesting is what they try and do with Jokic. He just killed them so much with the pass. And I wonder if they try and make him a scorer. So as I talked about before, that 27.5, it was kind of surprising that he even got to 27 points in the last game. He didn't even have to play much offense. But I could see them challenging him to score. And I think he will if they do, right? As opposed to letting anyone else beat them. So I think this is obviously a big game for the Heat. So I like that first half. Maybe a little Jokic over. We'll see if Jimmy Bucket's ankle is good enough to make some magic happen. Judah, anything else from you? Any baseball bets that we need to know about?
No baseball bets. I mean, the White Sox are still 250-1. Not much has changed there. It's still very early in the season. This is a team that when they did just sweep the Tigers. This is a team that if all the talent kind of plays to their potential and they're finally healthy, you don't get 250-1s that can actually win the World Series. And this is a team that was 16-1 preseason. And not much has changed. I'm still a sucker for the 250-1. But look, we're a basketball podcast. We got to just follow Ben Brown and the WNBA. I mean, that is like that's the definition of the printing press. Just ride it, and we'll be rich men.
Yeah, it's a great point. If you haven't listened to that episode, I think it was a couple weeks ago, we had Ben Brown on. He talked us through his model. As I mentioned, he's been posting a PDF in the printing press Discord with what the model likes on a daily basis. We are a basketball podcast. We are a Phoenix Mercury podcast. We'll continue to be that way throughout the entire season. Obviously, golf bets as well. Our guy Victor Hovland came through. I think he was 20-ish to 1 to win. So just a week late, a couple weeks late. But yeah, either way, cool to see him win. We'll be back on Wednesday evening. Maybe we'll begin the division previews at that point, Brad. Who knows? We'll keep teasing it until then. So you just have to show up. We appreciate you guys hanging out. If you enjoy the podcast, please share it. It's the best way to keep this thing growing. And we appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Peace.